Shabbat Shalom, everybody. So this week's Torah portion, Parshat Yitro. If we remember, Yitro is the father-in-law of Moses and a Midianite priest. And it's amazing that the parsha is named after him. And in this week's Torah parsha portion, we have the Decalogue, the Ten Commandments. So tonight we're going to reflect on what happened. Okay. So there's a midrash called Midrash Tanchuma from around the 8th or 9th century that says, this is the opener, because God appears to them, the children of Israel, at the Reed Sea as a mighty warrior, at Sinai as a sage teaching Torah, in the days of Solomon as a handsome lad, and in the times of Daniel as a compassionate old man. God says to them, just because you perceive me in many guises, do not think that there are many gods. Rather, it is I who was at the sea, I who was at Sinai, I who was in every place. I am the Eternal. So I will admit that God also takes a feminine form as well, and though this midrash didn't include that, we are the ones who can write those midrashes now. So 10 weeks have passed since the sea split and the Israelites walked through the terrestrial birth canal that is the Reed Sea. Their wandering through the wilderness thus far has not been completely smooth. There have been the standard mumblings and grumblings of a newborn nation trying to make sense of freedom, having only known enslavement. There's a bit of a dependency curve initially, that each person in the community needs to go through in order to learn to trust one another, to care for another, to depend on each other. This time is much like one of those wilderness camps that companies or communities go on to build cohesion or synergy. And it is in this growing stage that we arrive at Mount Sinai to experience the eternal and receive the Decalogue, the 10 utterances, or the 10 commandments. All different names for these 10 focal guidelines for us. In a word, revelation. But we will take a few more words to reveal some of the possible meanings behind revelation. Our text reads, chapter 19, verse 1, on the third new moon, after the Israelites had gone forth from the land of Egypt, on this very day, they entered the wilderness of Sinai. Midrash Tanchuma says that the text reads on this very day in order to teach us that revelation at Sinai, the words of Torah, should be a newly experienced event each day. Revelation, the experience of God at Sinai, is momentous and always happening. And we all need to step into this Cyber Sinai mind space on this day to see this mountain, to feel this mountain. The text continues. Moses summons the elders and the people and put before them all that the Eternal had commanded him. All the people answered as one, saying, all that the Eternal has spoken, we will do. Before the thunder and smoke engulf the mountain, before the synesthesia of seeing voices, hearing sounds, the Israelites make a commitment. Before even hearing the Decalogue, the 10 utterances, the spiritual ethical playbook, the children of Israel unify into one voice. And then preparations are made. Everyone bathes and does laundry. And the boundaries are set up so as not to touch the mountain. And then Mount Sinai was all in smoke, for the Eternal had come down upon it in fire. The smoke rose like the smoke of a kiln, and the whole mountain trembled violently. The blare of the horn grew louder and louder. If this were a movie, it would be the last scene, and the screen would fade out, leaving everyone on the edge of their seats. Some might get a little frustrated. Well, what happens next? It's no secret to open the book of Exodus, chapter 20. But try not to conjure up Charlton Heston and the 1956 drama epic, The Ten Commandments. Yeah, it got 89% on Rotten Tomatoes, but what does that mean anyway? But perhaps it also simplifies the mystery of this meeting. What was experienced at Mount Sinai? What is experienced at Mount Sinai? What did the people see, hear? What did God say? What did Moses say? The answers to this shape many communities and individuals' relationships to God, to religion, and to spirituality. For some, all that the children of Israel heard, read, all of us, don't forget we were all there, was the first letter, the Aleph. That's all that was heard. And this is suggested by Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Rimanov from the 18th century, that the Israelites heard only the unvocalized glottal stop Aleph, which is the first letter of the Decalogue, the cosmic Aleph, pointing to the infinite. That which precedes creation, Bereshit, which starts with the second letter, Bet. For Franz Rosenzweig, God only said the first word of the Decalogue, Anochi, I. God reveals existence at Sinai. And the people of Israel then recorded their response to God's presence in the form of Torah. While God might have initiated the revelation at Sinai, it was the human community which preserved that encounter. For some, God spoke the first 2 commandments, the directives, and Moses the remaining 8. And this is based off of the tenses in the text. The first 2 commandments are in the first person, and then the remaining 8 are in the third person. For others, as this Tanchuma Midrash relates, when the Holy Blessed One, be God, came to give Torah, God relates to Moshe in order: first the Bible, then Mishnah, then Agadah, then Talmud, even those future questions that a seasoned student would one day ask of his teacher. The Holy One, blessed be God, related even these things to Moshe at that time, as we find it in the Torah, and God spoke all of these things. There are many pathways into this experience, and the question is, what do you experience? You were there. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, 20th century theologian, states, as a report about revelation, the Bible itself is a midrash. The Sinai story is indeed a midrash, and we can reimagine revelation as having occurred in some other way. So for me, this is so powerful to take in, and perhaps it's a little shocking. How do we put into words the experience of the ineffable? How do we at once take the static letters of Torah and at the same time recognize that they are dynamic? The Reform movement in 1937 in their Columbus platform suggested that written Torah is a depository of biblical Israel's consciousness of God, a record of past revelation, but certainly not the last word in the ongoing dialogue with God. Instead, revelation is a continuous process confined to no one group, to no one age. For Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan, the founder of Reconstructionist Judaism, God was not a heavenly being, but rather the process in the world that makes for creativity, integration, love, and justice. This stance, by definition, denies the possibility of Sinai, an event which Kaplan regarded as a mere legend. The Heisenberg uncertainty principle says that the more you know about the location of an electron in its orbit around the atomic nucleus, the less likely it is to be there. God, the fabric of the cosmos, from the infinitesimal to the infinite, forever oscillating, vibrating, pulsatingly present. The Sinai theophany, as written in the Torah, is a window for us to peer through and ask, what do we see? What do we experience? We are called to look out and look in and renew the Sinai experience daily, full of possibility, reimagining revelation, not as a one-time event, but a continual, evolving, unfolding experience of God, the process in the world that makes for creativity, integration, love, and justice. For me, the essence of the experience lies in the location of this moment as dictated in the Torah and in the line that precedes the Ten Commandments. The divine is in the details. The text reads, just before the Ten Commandments, God spoke all of these words. That's it. That's the opener. And Nahum Sarna states, the introductory statement is unique in the Torah in that it does not indicate to whom the divine declaration is addressed. The lack of specificity and inherent complexity. On the one hand, it's all of the people as a corporate entity, a psychic unity that enters into this covenantal relationship with God. On the other hand, each member of the community is addressed individually. The Torah is given in the wilderness, in no man's land, that is, accessible to everyone. As Shalom Asch, the Polish Jewish novelist, reiterates, the words were uttered not for one people alone and not for one age, but for all peoples and for all generations until the end of time. And the Ten Commandments were a renewal of the act of creation. Its opening words of the Ten Commandments are, I am the eternal, and the last words are, your neighbor. These words bookend the 10 utterances and guide us to care for each other. The experience of the divine is a means to have us all arrive at community with those in our congregation, those down the hall, and all sentient beings. The Decalogue is the ethical technology to awakening us to the holy, the numinous in all, and have that awakening draw us together. To approach our text is to approach God. But the experience does not end when the ink dries. That's where the encounter begins. As eyes read letters, as ears hear words, as we learn from each other, revelation is born. Mount Sinai is a mountain with many pathways in, open to all. In our search, God is the serenity in the middle of our surrender. Found in the wilderness, present to us each day, for all who seek. Shabbat Shalom.